Okay, welcome back to Videos from the Ville. This is part two of definition and the history of the city. We also want to take a look at company towns. Company towns developed along with the Industrial Revolution. And I want to make sure that you see a video here about growing up in Hershey, one of the quintessential company towns in America. Um, I will be making that available to you. It's a half-hour video, and it's very, very good, talking about one of the types of company towns. You find that one of the types of company towns that people were interested in developing were utopias, and that's certainly what Milton Hershey had in mind when he developed Hershey, that it would be a utopia. That is, workers would never have to leave the area, all their needs would be met, they would be happy and satisfied and never need to unionize, and they would create actually. We have a wonderful letter from Milton Hershey when he goes off to build Hershey and to construct the factory, that he wants to create a mutual arrangement, a mutual um, partnership between labor and between the company, that they would work together so that they could all work in peace and harmony and everyone's needs would be met. Um, and I think he did very well in establishing a great deal of that. But one brand of company town was Utopia, and so that would be Hershey or perhaps Corning, New York as well. Um, and the video I will send you information about. But let's take a look at some of the beginning of company towns was really found in England, where we find that leading industrialists tried to improve conditions for workers by building these new towns. And perhaps one of the first individuals who deserves credit for this is Sir Titus Salt. Sir Titus Salt built the city of Saltaire, Saltaire, Saltaire. He built it in 1852, and it was built to accommodate 3,000 workers. In Germany, you have the Krupp family, of course, which is a very famous family for munitions. They built a number of small towns, and they built them near the large city of Essen, E-S-S-E-N, E-S-S-E-N, Essen, Germany. And their workers, again, they manufactured munitions and arms. Going back to England in 1879, we have George Cadbury, Cadbury chocolates. He built the city of Bournemouth. Bournemouth is B-O-U-R-N-E, mouth, Bournemouth. So he built Bournemouth in 1879, and it was to house his chocolate workers, just as Milton Hershey would build Hershey around 1900 for his chocolate workers. We have pictures on your PowerPoints of some of the structures and the facilities at Corning, New York. And if you've not been to Corning, it's well worth a trip. They have one of the most remarkable museums in the world for glass in Corning. Of course, right beside it was the one corner of the Hershey chocolate factory, the main plant, which was located in downtown Hershey. You find that several years ago, the east wing of that facility was destroyed. What is left of the downtown plant has all been made over into office spaces, and the plant itself, which was in downtown Hershey, has been rebuilt on the western end of Hershey. However, one of the things that was agreed upon by everyone was that the smokestacks would stay as a symbol of the city, of a symbol of the company. And in Hershey today, as you drive on Route 422 through Hershey, east or west, you can see the large smokestacks still standing, in addition to the cocoa bean towers, which are not in use anymore by the company. But they are the largest cocoa bean storage facilities in the world. Well, we have Ebenezer Howard that bears mentioning as well, as we're talking about the industrial cities and company towns. We have the slow but sure movement towards Ebenezer Howard and the concept of the new town. Ebenezer Howard, above all other individuals, is responsible for consolidating this concept of new towns. New towns were used as an urban planning movement. This is an urban planning movement. In 1898, Ebenezer Howard published one of the most famous books in planning called Tomorrow, A Peaceful Path to Social Reform. Tomorrow, A Peaceful Path to Social Reform. And in this textbook of 1898, he proposes something called the Garden City. The Garden City is supposed to be a solution to many of our urban planning problems of the time. He wished to fight overcrowding. He wished to fight congestion. The congestion and the overcrowding that you'd find in the industrial cities by building garden cities outside of the developed areas, so that people would be able to, if you will, people would be able to return to nature. And people would be able to stem, to halt, to stop the congestion in the large cities that we have. Well, what were the components of Ebenezer Howard's Garden City? What are the components of his Garden City? Let's take a look. The components of his Garden City are, number one, we have the land that's necessary for a garden city is about 1,000 acres. So he's generally recommending a settlement of the size of a garden city of about 1,000 acres. He believes that all land should continue to be owned by the public. The maximum population he recommends is 30,000 people. So about 1,000 acres, 30,000 people. He believes that you should have a green belt of about 5,000 acres. 5,000 acres of agricultural land, and that would surround the city. So you'd have a green belt of about 5,000 acres surrounding your 1,000 acre city, and that would all be agricultural land that would surround the city. And he believed that in a garden city you would have mixed land uses, and you'd have mixed land uses so that you could have social and economic self-sufficiency. By having mixed land uses, you could have a little bit of every type of human enterprise, so that all the different economic and social needs of the people would be met. Well, Ebenezer Howard's book that we just talked about a moment ago, his book again called Tomorrow, A Peaceful Path to Social Reform, you find that this book is so successful that it spurs the creation in 1899 of the Garden City Association. So in 1899, here in the United States, we have the establishment of the Garden City Association. And in 1903, just 4 years later, we have the association building their very first garden city. And that garden city, actually here we are still in England, that garden city is Letchworth. Letchworth, Letchworth. Again, Letchworth is spelled Letchworth, Letchworth. So that's the first garden city built in England. And the second one is Welwyn. And Welwyn is spelled Welwyn. Welwyn. So Welwyn is the second Garden City. They both were within 33 miles of London, and they both were very successful and became very self-sufficient. After the Second World War, the government of the United Kingdom used the Garden City concept. The Garden City concept is used as a means to control urban growth, as all the forces returned from the Second World War. All the soldiers and sailors and airmen, both men and women, returned from abroad and from fighting wars across Europe and in Asia. And as the population swells, the British government decided to use that concept, the Garden City concept, to try to control urban growth so that not everyone would end up, for example, in London. We have a picture on the PowerPoints of Ebenezer Howard. It's, I think, a very distinguished picture of him there. And we have a picture of Letchworth in the United Kingdom, what it looks like. Well, another major contribution at this point in time in the discussion of what a city is and how we define it is Patrick Geddes. Patrick Geddes. Geddes spelled his name G-E-D-D-E-S. G-E-D-D-E-S. Patrick Geddes. You find that Patrick made a major philosophical contribution to the industrial era. He made a major philosophical contribution to the industrial era. He led us to realize that physical planning in and of itself, if you're just looking at street design and building layout, that physical planning in and of itself would not improve urban living. That physical planning would not improve urban living unless you also took into account the social and economic needs on a regional scale. So he said that it's not good enough to just look at the city itself. You have to look at the city in conjunction with the surrounding countryside. So as we plan, we need to look at the city, the surrounding area, and we need to not just look at the physical features, what the street layout will be and what the building structures will be, but we also have to look at the social and economic life of the people in this area as well. That will be effective city planning. So that's Patrick Geddes. Okay, and this will take us through this first part 1 and part 2 of definition of a city and the history of the city. We'll